Chapter 3, Anatomy and Physiology of the Reproductive Systems. Upon completion of this chapter, you will be able to contrast the structure and function of the major external and internal female genital organs, outline the phases of the menstrual cycle, the dominant hormones involved, and the changes taking place in each phase, classify external and internal male reproductive structures, and the function of each in hormonal regulation. Components of the male and female reproductive system. This is an anatomy and physiology review. Everyone should kind of have a grasp of the reproductive system in both the male and the female. So in the female, the reproductive cells are the eggs or the ova. The organ for development of the fetus is the uterus. And in the male, the reproductive cells are the sperm, and the organ for the deposit of sperm is the penis. Functions of the external female genital reproductive organs is collectively called the vulva. The vulva protects the urethra and the vaginal openings, is highly sensitive to touch to increase the female's pleasure during sexual arousal. Components of the vulva include the mons pubis, the labia majora and minora, the clitoris, the vestibular structures, and the perineum. And this is a picture of the female external reproductive organs. And as you can see, here's the mons pubis. You have your urethral orifice, the hymen, the labia majora, the labia minora, the anus. So that's your female reproductive external organs. This describes the function of the labia and the clitoris. Your labia majora contains sweat and sebaceous glands. It protects the vaginal opening. The labia minora is a highly vascular and is abundant in nerve supply. It lubricates the vulva and swells with stimulation. The clitoris is a small cylindrical mass of erectile tissue and nerves, and it functions in sexual stimulation. The prepuce, or the hood-like covering over the clitoris, also is a site of female circumcision practiced in some cultures, and we'll talk about infabulation when we talk about violence. The structure and function of the vestibule. The vestibule is the oval area enclosed by the labia minora laterally. It's located inside the labia minora and outside the hymen. The opening into the vestibule is the urethra from the primary urinary bladder, the vagina, and two sets of glands. The opening into the vagina is called introitus. The fourchette is the half moon area behind the opening. And the two types of glands we have are the Bartholin's and Skene's glands, and they secrete mucus to keep the opening moist. The internal female reproductive organs include the vagina, the vajayjay, pocketbook, the purse, the woo-ha, all those other names that you can think of, the uterus, the cervix, the fallopian tubes, and the ovaries. And so this is just a picture of the internal organs of the female reproductive system. And like I said, this should be familiar to you guys. And a question. Is the following statement true or false? The clitoris is considered an internal reproductive organ. True or false? The answer is false. The clitoris is an external female reproductive organ. The internal organs include the vagina, the uterus, fallopian tubes, and the ovaries. Next, we're going to talk about layers of the uterine wall. The uterine wall has 3 layers, the endometrium, the myometrium, and the perimetrium. The endometrium is the innermost layer. It lines the uterine cavity in non-pregnant women. The myometrium is the muscular middle layer. It makes up the major portion of the uterus. It is composed of smooth muscle linked by connective tissue. And then the perimetrium is the outer serosal layer, and it covers the body of the uterus. The cervix is the lower part of the uterus, and if you look on figure 3.3 on page 71, it shows what the cervix looks like, and it's the appearance of a normal cervix. And then if you look at figure 3.4 on page 71, it shows you what a nulliferous cervix looks like. This is a person who's never had a baby, versus what the parous cervix looks like. And this is a woman who's had a vaginal delivery. The breasts. The breasts are considered accessory organs. They're specialized for milk secretion after pregnancy. The breasts, they consist of the nipple, the areola, the lobes, and the alveolar and lactiferous glands. So here's a picture of the breast, and it's showing the different lymph nodes, the alveoli, the ducts, the areola, and then the nipple. This slide goes over female sexual response. It just goes through the different sexual stimulation leading to vasocongestion. The vagina expands and elongates to allow for the penis to be inserted. Secretion of mucus by the vestibular glands. Estrogen and testosterone are both hormones of sexual desire in women. You have the orgasm, the rapid dissipation, and then the sexual cycle can repeat. So the sexual cycle is desire, excitement, plateau, orgasm, and resolution. Don't memorize that. You won't see that on your test. This is the female reproductive cycle. The different cycle, we have the ovarian cycle and the endometrial cycle. The ovarian cycle is a series of events associated with the developing oocyte or egg within the ovaries. And then the endometrial cycle is the endometrial or uterine cycle occurs in response to cyclic hormonal changes. The four phases of the endometrial cycle are the proliferative phase, the secretory phase, ischemic phase, and the menstrual phase. Hormonal regulation. The predominant hormones include gonadotropin releasing hormone, FSH, LH, estrogen, progesterone, and prostaglandins. Definitely, when we're talking about the cycle, the menstrual cycle, there's cyclical breast changes that occur. And then if the egg is not fertilized by a sperm, the woman, she sheds the endometrial layer, and she gets her period or menstruation. So this is figure 3.6 in your book. It's the menstrual cycle summary based on a 28-day, which is considered a normal menstrual cycle. You can find this on page 74 in your textbook. So we know that menstruation is the expulsion of the inner uterine lining occurring monthly, the endometrium. It marks the beginning and end of each menstrual cycle. Menarche is the establishment of menstruation in females, or your first period. Menopause is the naturally occurring cessation of regular menstrual cycles. And the frequency of menstrual cycles can be anywhere from 21 to 36 days, with the average being a 28-day cycle. So again, the different cycles of the menstrual cycle. We have the ovarian cycle, and that consists of the follicular phase, which is day 1 through ovulation. It's approximately days 10 to 14. This phase is named because it is when the follicles in the ovary grow and form a mature egg. The goal of this phase is to produce an ovum for fertilization. This phase starts on day 1 of the menstrual cycle and continues until ovulation. We know that with ovulation, that's day 14 of a 28-day cycle. After ovulation occurs, we go to the luteal phase, and the luteal phase is day 15 through day 28 of a 28-day cycle. So after the follicle ruptures, as it releases the egg, it closes and forms a corpus luteum. The corpus luteum secretes increasing amounts of the hormone progesterone, which interacts with the endometrium to prepare it for implantation. Progesterone is a very important hormone when it comes to pregnancy, and we'll talk more about that later. The endometrial cycle, it has the 4 phases. The first is the proliferative phase. The endometrium increases in thickness in preparation for implantation of the fertilized ovum. Then you have the secretory phase. It begins at ovulation to about 3 days before the next menstrual period. Progesterone is released by the corpus luteum after ovulation. The endometrium becomes thickened and more vascular and glandular, all in preparation for implantation if it were to occur. Next is the ischemic phase. If fertilization does not occur, the ischemic phase begins. Estrogen and progesterone levels drop sharply during this phase as the corpus luteum starts to degenerate. Then you have the menstrual phase. The menstrual phase begins as the spiral arteries rupture secondary to ischemia, releasing blood into the uterus, and the sloughing of the inner lining or the endometrial layer begins. Question. A woman reports that her menstrual period occurs every 28 days. The nurse would determine that ovulation in this woman would occur at which time? A, day 10, B, day 14, C, day 18, or D, day 22. The answer is B, day 14. So for a 28-day cycle, ovulation occurs usually on day 14. The proliferation phase starts on about day 5 of the menstrual cycle and lasts until ovulation. Then the secretory phase begins at ovulation to about 3 days before the next menstrual period. All right, menstrual cycle hormones. These are the major hormones that women produce. So the first is the gonadotrophin releasing hormone. It induces the release of FSH, or follicle stimulating hormone, and LH, luteinizing hormone, to assist with ovulation, and is secreted by the hypothalamus. Your FSH, or your follicle stimulating hormone, is secreted by the anterior pituitary gland and is primarily responsible for the maturation of the ovarian follicle, hence follicle stimulating. Your LH, or your luteinizing hormone, is secreted by the anterior pituitary gland and is required for both the maturation of preovulatory follicles and luteinization of the ruptured follicle. Your estrogen is secreted by the ovaries and is crucial for the development and maturation of the follicle. Your progesterone is called the hormone of pregnancy because of its calming effect. It reduces uterine contractions, allowing the pregnancy to be maintained. Progesterone is the hormone of pregnancy. We say progesterone maintains the pregnancy. Next is prostaglandins. Prostaglandins increase during the follicular maturation and plays a key role in ovulation by freeing the ovum inside the Graafian follicle. Now, when we get into pregnancy, your estrogen and your prostaglandins They actually help the uterus to contract, but my progesterone is my hormone that maintains the pregnancy. And this is just box 3.1 on page 77, which goes over the different menstrual cycle hormones. Menopause. We're going to talk just a little bit about menopause because it's going to pop up in another chapter. Some of the definitions. Perimenopause is the 2 to 8 years prior to menopause. A lot of women have vasomotor symptoms such as hot flashes and night sweats. There are several therapies that can be considered to help. You can do your pharmacologic and your non-pharmacological therapies. Menopause is the universal and irreversible part of the overall aging process. With a year without a menstrual period, a woman is considered to be menopausal. The external male reproductive organs. It includes the penis, which is the organ of copulation and the outlet for urine and sperm. You have the scrotum, which is the sac surrounding and protecting the testes. The client control system for testes. It keeps it at a nice neutral temperature so that the sperm can survive. This is a picture of the external male genitalia. He could have did a little manscaping before taking that picture, but who am I to judge? Your internal male reproductive organs include your testes, which are sperm production and testosterone synthesis. Then you have your ductal system, which includes the vas deferens, the spermatic cord, and the urethra. Other internal male productive organs are your accessory glands, such as your seminal vesicles, your prostate gland, the vulval urethral glands. The external organs, again, the penis and the scrotum. This is a female empowerment class, so we're not going to talk or prolong our male reproductive organ because when it comes to having a baby, they just deliver the sperm and then I don't need them anymore. So there's pictures of the internal male reproductive system, pictures of the external, and it shows the vas deferens, the epididymis, the seminiferous tubules. Moving on. Question, true or false? The testes need a temperature that is warmer than body temperature for normal sperm development. True or false? Of course, the answer is false. The testes need to be slightly cooler than body temperature to allow normal sperm development. So we tell men don't sit in the hot tub and boil your sperm, especially if I'm needing some of that sperm to get knocked up. I want it nice and cool. This is the male sexual response: desire, excitement, plateau, orgasm, and resolution. Pretty much similar to the female sexual response. This ends the audio lecture for Chapter 3. Thank you.